Welcome back to page 121. Today we're going to take a look at one of my favorite classes in all of D&D, the Ranger. Ranger Danger. We're going to look at the basic write-up in the player's handbook and then the expansion information that came out of Unearthed Arcana. Basically, the Ranger is a super fighter, if you will, and a lot of people have viewed him that way. A lot of people have, I don't know, it seems in the writing of AD&D that the belief was that the Ranger would just knock the fighter out of existence and everybody would want to be Rangers. I never found that to be the case. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the Ranger, their powers and abilities, today on page 121. Also, subscribers, come on. I'm always looking at everybody who subscribed. Thank you. Everybody who hasn't, come on. I've got a Patreon going. I've got rewards now if you want to take a look at that and see if there's anything that you want to do there to help out, grow the channel a little bit, grow my tech a little bit. That'd be great. End of commercial. Back to what we're talking about. Today on page 121, the Ranger. The Ranger. A very good character class from the player's handbook. Totally not a lift from Lord of the Rings. Completely original to AD&D. You see I'm being facetious. Doesn't matter. When my buddy first introduced me to D&D, long before we had the player's handbooks or anything, he just had a little white box, and then we went on to the blue boxes. He said, he was describing D&D to me, and I was like, okay, I was struggling to understand a little bit. And he said, well, you remember the Lord of the Rings movie, the Ralph Bakshi movie? He and I had seen that in 1978 when it was released, and he knew I liked it. I said, yeah, I remember that movie. I liked it a lot. And he said, well, and yeah, by the way, I like the Ralph Bakshi animated one. The regular movies are far superior films. I agree with that completely, but I have a sentimental place in my heart for the Ralph Bakshi one. So there, I said it. So he said, well, you remember that movie you liked, Strider, Aragorn? I said, yeah. He said, well, you could play Aragorn. And that got me hooked. I wanted to play. We went back to his house and we played some D&D. And I didn't play Aragorn that first day. I played a fighter, and he got killed. But I also DM'd that day and killed my party. So we had 3 games that day, all very brief. All 3 of us who were playing DM'd for a moment. And each of us did a TPK, but I was hooked from that day on. So looking at the Ranger, we see that it's a subclass of fighter. They're adept at woodcraft, tracking and scouting, and infiltration. And those are aspects that are very fun to play with the Ranger. They have to be good, but they can be lawful, chaotic, or neutral. You must have strength of not less than 13, intelligence of not less than 13, wisdom of not less than 14, and a 14 or greater constitution. I always wondered why they worded that so weirdly. If the Ranger has ability scores greater than 15 in strength, intelligence, and wisdom, he or she gains the benefit of adding 10% experience points rewarded by the referee. So it's a good class. It's kind of hard to make, but you could if you sit with your buddies. And we used to just sit and roll until we got the Ranger. And then I did a video on how you kind of manipulate it through your race and through your age. It's not that hard to make a Ranger. Unlike other fighter types, Rangers use 8-sided dice, but they get 2 at first level. The way we handle that is because you get 2 dice. The first dice is at full for first level, so it's 8 hit points. You have to throw the second die, and whatever that throw is, you get. So if I threw it and it was a 5, that would be 8, plus the 5 is 13. I would get my Constitution bonus twice, once for each die. And so if I had an 18 Constitution, I would get an additional 8 points. I would get 8 for my full 8 on my first die, 5 for my second die that I threw a 5 on, and then 4 for the con on the first die and 4 for the con on the second die. So that would be a total of 21 hit points to start. Rangers start with potentially the most hit points of any character class. When fighting humanoid types of the giant class list, quote unquote, the giant class list always kind of cracked me up because it includes kobolds. Giant class creatures are bugbears, atins, giants, gnolls, goblins, hobgoblins, kobolds, ogres, ogre magi, orcs, and trolls. So for each level of experience I have, I get a +1 bonus to damage for striking any of those. So if I'm fighting a troll, for instance, and I'm 5th level, I get +5 to my damage for each time I strike the troll. That is really powerful when you roll in any kind of exceptional strength, and then you roll in any kind of weapon specialization. We'll get to that in a bit. Rangers surprise opponents 50% of the time, 1 through 3 on a six-sider, and are themselves surprised only on a 1 on a six-sider, so 16% of the time. Tracking is possible indoors, outdoors, and underground. And then it gives us some vague rules on how we do it, but nothing that goes up by your level. We'd have to wait for Unearthed Arcana to give us that. And honestly, the Ranger tracking was a little confusing with the way it was done here. I like it. I've used it. I still use it. It's just you have to be ready to kind of modify it and make some on-the-fly judgments. At 8th level, Rangers gain limited Druidic spell ability, and additional spells are added through 17th level. And at 9th level, they gain limited MU spell ability as the Druid spell ability. You cannot read Druid or Magic User spells from Magic Scrolls in any event. I thought that was silly. If it's a spell that they're eligible to cast and they find it on a scroll, I let them use it, but only spells that they can cast that they find on scrolls. If they find a 7th level spell and they can't cast it, then I don't allow them to use it on a scroll. 10th level, Ranger Lord. Rangers are able to employ all non-written magic items which pertain to clairaudience, clairvoyance, ESP, and telepathy. Interestingly, that includes a crystal ball. So yes, Rangers can use a crystal ball. Palantir, anyone? Also, 10th level, you attract a body of men, 2 to 24 followers, and that these henchmen, once lost, can never be replaced, although mercenaries can be hired to bring them in. The Rangers have some really fun stuff they can get for henchmen out of the Dungeon Master Guide. I may take a look at that as a completely separate video, because you can end up with some really interesting combinations. Following restrictions and strictures apply to Rangers. Any change from good alignment to non-good immediately strips you of all benefits, and you become a fighter with 8-sided dice thereafter, and can never regain Ranger status. I disagree with that. If you atone for it, then I would allow Ranger status to come back just like the Cavalier gets. Rangers may not hire men-at-arms, servants, aides, or henchmen until they attain 8th level or higher. Okay, I have no issue with that. No more than 3 Rangers may ever operate together at any one time. I've never found that I needed that rule. I think there was a lot of fear early on that Rangers were the super class and nobody would take fighters anymore and everybody would be Rangers. So they threw in that rule to limit it. I don't honestly think I've ever needed to use that rule. And honestly, I probably would throw that rule out anyway. If I had 4 players who all wanted to play Rangers, I'd probably just say fine. Rangers may only own those goods and treasure which they can carry on their person and or place upon their mount. All excess must be donated to worthy communal or institutional causes, never to another player character. We are a little freer with this rule. I have no problem if a Ranger is putting aside a little bit of money with some type of banking institution in town, but it's got to be a nominal fee, 100, 200 gold pieces. It can't be, 50,000 gold pieces that they're holding as their nest egg. But they can also convert a lot of their personal wealth from any kind of adventuring that they get from coin to jewels, gems, even magic items. So I have no issue with that rule. It's fine, but I do allow a little bending of that rule. Although Rangers do not attract a body of mercenaries to serve them when and if Rangers construct strongholds, they conform to the fighter class in other respects. Okay, so they get the exceptional strength bonus, they get the higher con bonus, that kind of stuff. So we take a look at their table. 2,251 to go from 1st to 2nd level. Pretty high, but you already started out pretty strong. And of course, at 2nd level, you're a Strider. 350,000 experience points for each level above 12th. And then the spells. These caused a lot of confusion back in the day, and we had to make some rulings around it. I played this 2 ways. If I'm an 8th level Ranger and I get a 1st level Druid spell, and it's a spell that's dependent on level, at what level do I cast that spell? Do I cast it as a 1st level Druid, or do I cast it as an 8th level Druid? Same with Magic User. I'm a 9th level Magic User and I get a Magic User spell. First off, we do give bonuses to Rangers for Wisdom for their Druid spells, and we give them for Intelligence for the Magic User spells, if appropriate. So I'm a Magic User and I'm 9th level Ranger and I've got my first Magic User spell and I choose Magic Missile. When I fire Magic Missile, do I fire 1 die 4 plus 1, or do I fire 5 die 4 plus 1? If doing it as a 1st level Magic User, it's 1 dice, but if I'm casting it at my Ranger level, it's 9. Or 9th, so it would be 5 die 4. I get 1 on every odd level. I've played it both ways, and honestly, it doesn't make a bunch of difference. My experience has been that the Druids that, or the druid and the magic user spells that are taken by the ranger generally aren't very level specific, maybe in duration, like an entangle, but not in their actual power. So that's never really been an issue at our table. I've played it both ways. I remain of two minds. I find it easier to just say, okay, you cast it as an 8th level ranger, so you cast the druid spell, the 1st level druid spell, as an 8th level druid. That's fine. I just find it gives a little too much power a little too quickly. It's easier to do it that way. And as I say, I've run them both ways. I'm still of two minds on when that comes up. It's something we discuss. A lot of times I'll just say the heck with it, cast it whatever level your ranger level is, and that's the level you cast the spell at. It's just kind of easier. By the way, we do not allow any other druid powers to fall to the rangers, so no shapeshift or anything like that. And then we take a quick look at the melee table, and then you've got fighter, ranger, and all that. And so rangers, 1st through 7th level, get 1 attack per round, and then at 8th level, they're the latest ones. They go to 3 to 2. So okay, ranger, pretty straightforward, pretty fun class, some nice powers, but not crazy. Now let's see what Unearthed Arcana does. Player's Handbook was published in 1978. Unearthed Arcana was published later than that. It was published in 1985. Okay, we go to the page. The Ranger. Okay, it says, I'm going to zoom in again. The Ranger. Members of the Ranger subclass of fighters are entitled to benefits of weapon specialization and their expansion of abilities primarily for tracking. Okay, this was pretty good. Principally, tracking is 10% per level plus an additional 10%. So 1st level ranger has a 20% chance to track. That's pretty straightforward, who a max of 110%. And then modifiers. Soft terrain that holds impressions, plus 20%. Occasional broken twigs or other obvious signs of passage, plus 10%. Only infrequent signs due to rock and things like that, no bonus. And then prevents all but the minutest traces of passage. That would be like a blowing storm or something like that, minus 50%. And then for every creature beyond the 1st in the group, you get a bonus of 2%. So all of this is pretty close to what was originally in there, but it does go up by level. And that actually made a big difference. So if I have a 7th level ranger, my base chance to track is now 80%. 10% for my 7 levels, 10% for each level, that's 70, plus 10% for the base. So it's an 80% chance to track with these various modifiers. And then we go into time elapsed is minus 5% for every 12 hours, and then precipitation that's fallen minus for every hour, minus 25%. So you can get to a point where you just can't track something. And I'm fine with that. I like that too. And then if creatures try to hide their efforts, they can take you down one category in your ability to track them if they're doing something intelligent to hide their tracks, sweeping them with brush, things like that. And then indoor tracking is a little tougher, but very similar. And then indoor tracks are impossible if you have never observed some distinguishing feature about the tracks of the creature to be tracked. That never made sense to me, because if I see the tracks, I can follow those tracks. I may not know what the creature is, but I can follow the tracks. And then we get illumination and how that messes up with your ability to track in a dungeon specifically, indoors and outdoors, but really in a dungeon is the bigger problem. And then identification of the tracks to be able to tell what the creature is. The ranger can tell what they are, and this is also level based. So 1st level, common woodland creatures tracks and direction of travel. 2nd level, common woodland creatures number and pace, and then all the way to 10th. Let's go at 9th, 10th. All creatures ever observed prior to attaining 10th level or subsequently, so I can tell the size, the weight, the number, all kinds of goodies about these guys because of my skill as a ranger. They also expanded the giant class to include creatures from Fiend Folio and Monster Manual 2. And then Ranger's weapons. This is interesting. Ranger only gets 3 weapons to start. He can specialize in a longsword. If a ranger double specializes in a longsword, then he uses 3 weapon slots. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. But it says here he has to take a bow or a light crossbow first, always, and then a dagger or knife as a weapon of proficiency. Well, if that's true, then the ranger can never, ever be a double specialist in sword because he can't get a sword until he's 4th level, yet he is allowed to become a sword double specialist or sword specialist, single or double, but that has to be chosen at time of character creation. So those, obviously, they contradict themselves right here in the same rule book. We threw this rule out. We were let Rangers take any weapons that they really want, and then they can specialize in what they want. Otherwise, this just restricts the heck out of them. And then we have the attacks per round again for this, including the Barbarian, the Cavalier, and the Paladin. And the Ranger still goes up at 8th level to his 3-2 attacks. Keep in mind, if he's weapon specialized, he's 3-2 attacks for his levels 1 through 7, and then levels 8 through 14, he gets 2 attacks a round. He moves up 1 layer on this chart. So some interesting things about the Ranger, a couple of interesting contradictions right here in the rule books. Just another example, in my opinion, of Unearthed Arcana being rushed to press. Even though these rules had been around in Dragon Magazine for about 3 years by this point, some of the stuff obviously still hadn't seen good playtest, or if it saw good playtest, it didn't make it into the book. Maybe it wasn't proofread enough, but you do have some rules, especially in this book, where one rule counters the other. So you just make some common sense rulings. We've always allowed weapon specialization for Rangers and fighters, and they can take whatever weapon that they want. So that's it for today on page 121. I want to thank you for your time. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions or constructive criticism, please leave them below. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time on page 121.